SirVern back here with another review. Today I am reviewing Maneater for the PS5. So it's also on PS4 and I think Xbox consoles, maybe PC too. But anyway, Maneater is kind of like a collectathon platformer in the ocean, I guess. That's how you would describe it, an action game. I don't really know how they classify this game, but that's how I classify it. So I'm going to go over the same five categories I always go over: graphics, performance, gameplay slash story, replayability, and then fun factor. And then give them a score 1 to 10, average them up, and then a few notes at the end. So, graphics, let's start there. The graphics are decent. Um, they weren't going for hyper realism again. It's more like a arcadey, not cartoony. Um, it's just not like hyper realistic, but they're not bad. They're just okay. I give graphics a 7. Although it's a PS5 game, they probably should be a little better. Um, it's okay, just okay. So performance, the next category, is one of the worst categories, although they're all pretty bad. Spoiler alert. So performance, I give a 5. Uh, the game performs terribly. It drops frames. It hard crashed one time, but the biggest issue is just it's not every second, but I would say at least once every 5 minutes it has a hard frame drop. Like stutter really bad. So when it loads certain sections, it stutters. Even draw distances aren't great when you get above water and you. It's dumb. You get above water. I mean, you jump on land and eat humans. The whole premise is kind of silly, but the performance is pretty poor. So I give it a 5. Gameplay slash story. Okay, I'll start with gameplay. So at first, the game I was looking for a relatively short game to beat. This one's set about 8 hours, which I didn't realize I was going to platinum the game, which I did, but I wasn't initially going for the platinum. But as I was clearing out each section, I realized that I started getting trophies for each section. And at first I thought that's what you were supposed to do to complete the game, but you really didn't. You could kind of just go just through the story and beat the game quicker than I did. Uh, so it took me 11, 12 hours, maybe a little longer to beat it, to platinum it, I mean. So anyway, the gameplay at first was kind of fun. It was dumb fun, right? You're a shark jumping, double jumping, like on land, uh, on beaches, killing enemies, humans. So it's kind of funny in that respect, where you're not the humans killing a shark, you're a shark killing humans, which is a cool kind of take on it. There's only been a few games that have done that, and one's on the PS2. Can't remember exactly what it's called, but anyway. It's fun at first and gets super repetitive, and then you realize that you've seen the whole deck of cards within the first 3 hours of the game. You do essentially the same thing in every single section, except the enemies get bigger and a tad bit harder. So instead of killing, baby fish, you're killing a swordfish, or you eventually kill an alligator, and then later on you kill a shark or a whale. So, but you're just constantly pulling the trigger, chomping. It just kind of gets old. So the story is actually not bad. It's not much to it. If the story was more complex and had a few more cutscenes, then the story would have been better. So overall, I give it a 6. So it's just kind of mediocre because the gameplay is okay at first, gets old. The story is just not. It's for what's there. It's not bad. It is kind of interesting to see why you're chomping away at certain enemies, but it's just not very deep and doesn't hold your attention very long. There's like 8 hunters that you beat, and after the first 2, you're like, is that really all you do? Because at first it's cool, like I said, the first 3 hours, maybe the first few hunters. After you kill enough people, you like start an alarm, and then hunters come out for you. And then once you kill enough hunters, then you fight the boss, and there's 8 of those. But you do the same thing, so it just gets old after a while. And that leads us to the worst category is replayability. Gave this a 1, only because it's a 1 out of 10 and not a 0 out of 10 that I rate from. It's terrible because you platinum the game with barely. I wasn't even trying to platinum the game. I wasn't even looking at the trophies because after a few hours of this game, you're just like, oh man, this is not going to be something I really want to grind through. Although I did kind of do that because once I realized that you could just go from story mission to story mission and beat the game, I'd already done like half the sections complete. Like I've completed like half of them. You explore, you go through little gates, and it's like a collectathon, but boring because um, you collect the same items in every section, boxes of food at the bottom, or little landmarks that are relatively interesting. But I mean, once you've beat this game, you have to be a lunatic to want to go back through it, in my opinion, like a psychopath, because you're chomping the same things over and over. I cannot imagine doing any more of this. It was boring. After half the game, you're just like, oh my gosh, my spring is gonna snap in half because all you're doing is chomping at different enemies. Seriously, I wouldn't even be like paying attention. Sometimes I'd just be holding the button. It's dumb. Replayability 1, awful. Um, in fact, I beat the game and then it kind of continued for a second, and I was like, interesting. So I just kept playing to see what it was gonna do, and of course, I got to a literal and figurative wall in the game where it stopped you and wanted your credit card information because it was trying to sell you DLC for on sale for $10. Heck no. The game, I think I spent $40 on the PS5 game. Huge waste of money. This is a $19, $19.99, $20 game, brand new on the PS5. Do not spend more than $20 on this game. Used, I mean, $10 is the maximum I would spend on this game. A few hours of stupid fun, some funny commentary, but other than that, you will never put. I deleted this immediately after reading it. I will never play this again. Fun factor, I gave it a 5, and that seems high for what I just dogged the game for a little bit, but it was fun the first like 3 or 4 hours. The first bit of the game, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. You level up your shark. It sounds dumb, but you level up your shark, you add armor, like bone armor or electricity powers. It's kind of cool, right? But a little later, 2 or 3 hours in, or later than that, so say 5 hours in, you've probably fully upgraded your shark, maybe 6 hours in. You're like fully upgraded. You're like, and then I was max level, max shark before I even beat the game. So it just got completely pointless. The only thing I was doing is eating the same school of fish. It's just dumb, and you have to swim all the way over here, all the way over here, swim over here, chomp these fish, and it's dumb. Fun factor 5, like I got off track, but fun factor 5, just because the first half is okay, the last half is awful. So that's it. Graphics 7, performance 5, gameplay / story 6, replayability 1, fun factor 5. Average them up, 4.8 out of 10. I think that's a terrible score. The only redeeming factor was like the gameplay at first, and then the story was pretty consistent overall. Maybe if I went through not doing everything in the game, just doing the story missions, it may have taken 7 hours, 7 or 8 hours max. I think that may be even too long. But if the game was 5 hours just doing story missions and maybe eat one school of fish in each section, or just a few collectathon things, or change it up a little bit, different missions rather than just chomp the same enemies, or I don't know. They could have done so much more because the premise wasn't terrible. It was kind of interesting. But anyway, 4.8, not a good game. And then the notes I wrote: it's fun at first, repetitive, story could have been better, because the characters are interesting. The story isn't terrible, it's just not enough of it. There's only maybe 5 cutscenes in the whole game. They just could have done so much more with it. And then I wrote too long, which I think I already spoke about. But if they made this a 5-hour game and made it $20, and then made a trophy or two that were like kind of hard to get to keep you playing, or like New Game Plus, or do something with it rather than eat the guppies and then eat the sharks and then eat the whale and then attack this hunter. There's not many cards in this hand. I mean, it's just, you've seen the entire premise of the game within the first few hours, like maybe even 2 hours. You've seen everything there is to do. The only difference is you're going to be pulling the right trigger to chomp different enemies. It's really dumb. And the platinum was not fun because about 75% in, I saw myself getting most of the trophies, and I was like, this is a game where you pretty much could just, follow places on the map and then go chomp this, and I had already done most of it, so I was like, well, I guess I'll just go ahead and get it, and I regret it because it was just extremely boring, dumb, and a waste of my time. So do not play this game unless it is heavily discounted, or you can get it used for $10. I know it's on PS4 too, so maybe even buy the, because the performance is awful on PS5. So I can imagine the PS4 version is awful too, but at least you can save $1 or $2. Maybe buy the PS4 version. Even if you have a PS5, get the PS4 version for whatever, $10 used. But anyway, Maneater's terrible. SirVern out.